Teachers of Reddit, what is the funniest response you got on a test when the student didn't know the answer? I was marking a final year engineering test, TA not lecturer, and instead of answering the last question, some guy drew an incredibly detailed portrait of himself serving fries at a McDonald's with the caption, "Me if I fail this." I still had to fail him, but I did feel bad about it. Some say he's serving fries till this day. Just another student. We had a test which involved the sex education part. The question was, what are 2 causes of infertility in males? His response, lack of penis. He tried to argue that he wasn't wrong and somehow got a mark. What was the other cause? Lack of balls. I was helping a teacher grade back in high school, and I was grading a kid's geometry quiz. The question was a 2-column proof, and it asked him to prove that one side was congruent to another based off of 2 triangles being congruent, had to prove the 2 triangles were congruent first. This was his whole answer. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle BCD because they kinda look the same. Side AB equals side DB because they're both 3 eraser lengths long. College-level physics exam asked for a brief description of Maxwell's theory. The instructor shamed a student by reading aloud his answer. Good to the last drop. What a dumbass. Everyone knows the real Maxwell's theory is, if it is Maxwell brand coffee, then it is good to the last drop. Saw a post on Reddit where someone drew a picture and got credit for it for a test answer, so I did the same thing on my next science test. Teach told me that my drawing of a giraffe was garbage and gave me nothing. Should have told him his test was garbage. When my wife and I were TAs in grad school, we proctored and then graded an essay exam. We had a student write, "I don't know, so here's a picture of a puppy." He then drew a beautiful picture of a puppy. It took him nearly an hour to complete it. To this day, when I ask my wife a question and she doesn't know the answer, she just says, "Puppy." My high school teacher would always encourage us to write funny answers down if we didn't know anything. She found marking tests extremely boring, so if we could make her laugh, we'd at least get 0.5 of a mark on it. I'm a teacher that hasn't gotten any super funny answers yet. But when I was a student, my philosophy class did a group thing about a test. Our professor had told us at the start of the quarter that when we did the final, if every single person turned in the test that is blank except for a name, we would all get an A. Apparently he had made this offer to every class for years. Well, of the 20 or so of us in the class, only 1 person was passing. We all thought the teacher was a dick. So when it came time for the final, he passed out the test and left to go to his office. After he was gone, we all talked about it, and those of us who had bad grades said, "We have nothing to lose by turning in a blank paper. We are failing anyway." And then we looked at the one guy who was passing. He said, "I'm a philosophy major, so I just want to find out if he means it or not. Let's do it." So we all wrote down our names on our individual tests. Then we lined up and went to his office and one by one handed him our blank tests. He was shocked. We were the first class to pull it off. He made us promise not to tell anyone, and he did give us all 100% on the final. I clearly did not keep my promise about not talking about it. Back in the 3rd grade, I had a 2-part written question on a science test. Part 1. If you had to change the gas nitrogen to a liquid, how would you do it? My answer: I would change it to a liquid. Part 2. Explain what would happen. My answer: it would change to a liquid. Funny thing is, I actually got full credit. My teacher wrote something like, "I can't say that this is what I was looking for, but I can't say that it's wrong, either." What school did you go to where you learned about nitrogen liquefaction at 3rd grade? I'd like to send my kids there one day. Not me. But on a sample essay I read for AP World History, they were listing evidence for a question related to American Indians. One kid wiped his blood on the exam sheet and wrote, "This is a blood sacrifice to the sun god of the Incas." Sadly, he didn't get credit. Sun god prefers beating hearts to blood. Be glad that all that happened was him not getting credit. The sun god could have gotten angry and left the world in eternal darkness. I took a philosophy class in high school. For the final paper, we had the option to write an essay arguing to the teacher that we were not a figment of his imagination. I decided to do the opposite. I wrote a whole essay about how I was a figment of my teacher's imagination. I ended up with a B in the course. That was the only assignment I handed in for the entire course. Well, if I'm not imaginary, then where are all my other assignments? Not a teacher or anything, but here's a related story. An acquaintance of mine didn't know what to do on a Spanish 2-unit test, so he attached a $20 bill to the test when he turned it in. He never saw it again and received an F, but it didn't bother him. Kid was bawling out in drug money. I had one ESL student who couldn't quite get the hang of changing singular nouns into plurals. I have a pen, got him full marks on the unit test. I have 2 penis, did not. When I was a sophomore in high school, I was in a biology class, and the very first test I was clueless. At this point in time, I didn't quite know the teacher or his style or anything about him, really. So naturally, clueless on the essay question, I decided to go meta and write a speech about how I was bombing the test. I compared it to Harry Truman deciding to nuke Japan, and how that was thought to save lives. By my own nuking of the test, who knows? Maybe I could do the same. I got a call from my mom later on. He didn't like it. In fact, he decided to interpret it as a bomb threat. Needless to say, it was a rough semester. I'm not a mantra of the topic here, but I was taking a film history and appreciation class at college and came across this question. What is a camera obscura? My answer was, the type of camera a hipster uses. I got no points, but my professor said he got a good laugh out of it. I was one of the last classes to take a hotly contested statewide standardized exams. In its dying days, some big muckety-muck decided it would be a great idea to add a science portion to the exam. Their mistake was telling my class that we were the first class to take it, and therefore were simply testing if it was useful for the school board, and our results on that section would have no bearing on our final test results. The question was something like, Susie and John have a heavy box. They need to put the heavy box on a shelf, but it's too heavy. They have several pieces of wood, a hand saw, a pulley, etc., etc., etc. Design a system for moving the box to the shelf and explain why this works in scientific terms. My response: Susie and John could do many things. They could build a lever, as you're obviously suggesting they do with the boards, but the box would likely slide back down the lever and kill Susie and John. Here is a drawing of Susie and John dead under a box. They could build a pulley, but I don't want to explain how that works, and also, if they're too small to reach the shelf with the box, how the fuck are they going to attach a pulley to the roof? Drawing of Susie and John looking sad as their parents yell at them for screwing around with the garage ceiling. My recommendation is that Susie and John open the fucking box and move everything individually like normal human beings. Picture of Susie and John high-fiving and saying, "Gee willy walkers. We did it." Since the test was unscored, I never found out how they liked my solution, but I hope I gave some old ladies a few conniption fits. Not a grader, but on my AP Calc test last year there was one question that I had no idea what a fact they were even asking. After staring at it for about 10 minutes I gave up and drew a portrait of the proctor surrounded by velociraptors, and climbing up a rope from a helicopter. I like to think I got at least partial credit for that. I did something similar. I just completely blanked on a calc question, so I drew a picture of a cat and wrote, "I don't know what to do here, so here's a kitty." My professor wrote back, "Kitty says, find the derivative and expand." Not a teacher, but when I was in high school I had an essay exam about a book I had not read. Instead of answering the question, I wrote an essay about why I didn't read the book and talked about another book I had read instead. My teacher ended up liking it and gave me a good grade on it, even though I had not read the book he assigned. I guess he liked that I put effort into writing an essay about a book I actually read instead of trying to bullshit him. I graded AP exams this summer. For one essay question, I got an awesome barbecue sauce recipe from a kid in Tennessee. I've made it a couple times, and it's excellent. Not a teacher, but in German secondary school in chemistry a student didn't know the answer for a question and wrote KP on the paper. KP is short for Kein Plan, which basically means no clue. The teacher thought it stands for Kochpunkt, which means boiling point, and it was the correct answer, and she even got full credits on that one. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.